Hello, everybody. This is Skip Alsheimer. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime Streaming Show, where we watch old 16mm films, and that one was a doozy. That was the Tacoma Narrows Bridge Collapse, which some of you said in the comments you've seen it multiple times in montages where engineering fails. And I got a chance to actually show the original footage that was shot by the guy who's has the copyright at the beginning, Frank somebody, I think, at MoMA, where this film, although the stuff with the stats was added by the university, the original footage was entered into the National Film Registry, and we were doing a screening at Museum of Modern Art in New York, where we were showing home movies that had been entered into the National Film Registry. And so we showed that one. I showed quite a few others, and I got to see a 4K scan of the Zapruder film, which came from National Archives, and we showed it. And it's pretty intense. You don't see it, and certainly the times it's been duped so many times, it gets lessened, but we saw what was pretty close to the original copy, and it was stunning resolution and also horrifying. So there you go. Good morning, everybody. So I'm dealing with a cold. It's cold and rainy outside. There's lots of things going on. We're doing laundry downstairs, which is why I'm not downstairs, because I don't want you to have to hear my washer and dryer thumping along. That was the Tacoma Narrows Bridge was something that I scanned yesterday, and today I also scanned this film called Peaceful Ones, and it's missing the title in the beginning, I think, and also the ending, but I was able to find out that it was made in 1952, and it's about Native Americans, a specific tribe, I think, and there are some imagery in here that is amazing. So here we go, Peaceful Ones. Enjoy.
The Painted Desert. North from here are great fingers of mesas and colorful cliffs. Up some of these high cliffs in prehistoric times climbed the more peaceful tribes to escape from their enemies in the plains below. And today their descendants, the Hopis, still live in their sky-perched homes, in pueblos that were teeming communities 200 years before Columbus stumbled along our eastern seaboard. One of them, Old Oribe, is said the oldest continuously inhabited spot. Weathered by time and the skies, the ancient streets and houses lie dreaming under the weight of centuries. For over 1,000 years, the Pueblo men have built their villages from materials at hand. From the valley, 600 feet below, the houses of native rock blend into the mesa for safety, not easily seen, nor easily reached by one of the few paths up the sheer cliff walls. These peaceful ones are an industrious people, and their daily life follows the pattern of centuries. They live in a matriarchal society wherein the women are the center, and inheritance passes from mother to daughter. Every task is set by tradition, women and men being assigned to separate duties. The man builds the home, which becomes the property of his wife, to be inherited by their eldest daughter. To the house is brought the harvest, also the wife's property, although it was eked out of the barren land by the man of the family. The Hopis are an agricultural people. The men farm tiny fields at the base of rocky cliffs. A mere patch on the valley floor, they do not look like usual farmlands. The corn, wide-spaced and planted deep to reach the meager water, grows no more than 3 feet tall. But carefully tended, the sturdy stalks are crowded with 12 and 15 big ears. And only at ground level can some of them find room to push from the stalk. Bountiful crops wrested from a reluctant land by patient, diligent, hard labor. The orchards, often tucked between the rocks at Mesa's edge, are squat and gnarled. They're stunted by the scorching winds and the parched earth. And their roots are exposed by the shifting sand. Yet the dwarfed trees are heavy with their harvests, which ripen peaches, apricots, and apples, literally crowded on tough little branches. For the hardy trees bring forth heavy harvests from the dry land. After the crops are harvested, there is still no rest for the Hopi hands. Through the winter months, the work goes on. The peaceful Hopis are the only tribe in all America wherein the men are the weavers, and they, not the women, own the sheep of the tribe. The wool from the small bands is sheared and washed and dried. Then it is ready for carding. In this combing process, the wool is further cleaned. As it is brushed and combed between the carding combs, it is pulled apart and shredded. To roll off the carding combs, a soft, white fluff. As if by magic, this soft white fluff becomes firm, stout yarn. By means of a simple wooden spindle, it is spun into thread. Expert fingers twirl the spindle and pull and stretch the wool. Over and over again, it is twisted and pulled, spun and respun to become fine and even. For standards are high with these Hopi weavers, trained as they are from childhood, by old to young. At last, the fine yarn is ready for the looms. Looms that are stretched in the shadows inside the ancient houses from floor to ceiling. Seated on the native rock floor, hour after hour, the patient weaver works. Each thread is pounded down onto the one before. The wooden batten or stick is slipped between the warp and turned edgewise to hold apart the threads. The yarn is pulled between. Again, it is beaten down to hard, tight smoothness. The more the pounding, the more firm and close the weave. Through the long winter months, the textile grows, slowly, thread by thread. And these textiles, plain in color, white or black or dark green, are woven for ceremonial garments. The border decorations are embroidered on later by the weaver. The designs are set by tradition, a distinct pattern for each dance and ceremony. The borders are spaced with medallions of symbolic designs, clouds piled high above a mountain, or a sacred squash blossom. For ritual shapes all Hopi life, and religion is the heart of their existence. Far across the plains to the southwest loom the ancient San Francisco peaks. Here, high in the sky, live the Kachinas, the supernatural beings of the Hopis. Little dolls are made to teach the children of these beings. They are carved in the likeness of the Kachinas and are made by the male relatives to be given to the little ones. From dry cottonwood roots, the doll is whittled and filed into shape. After smoothing, the figure is painted with costume and features. Some are simple and crude, others intricate and delicate. There are over 200 Kachinas. Each represents an idea, or nature, or an animal, such as the owl kachina. Then there are the clown kachinas, called mudheads by the Indians. The dolls are presented to the children during the kachina dances, held the first half of each year. The dancers in these ceremonies always wear masks. When masked, the dancers believe they lose their own identity and receive the spirit of that kachina. And the prayers of the people are carried to the gods through the impersonation. In July, the kachina spirits return to their San Francisco peaks until another spring brings them again to the mesas to watch over the growing crops of their good Hopis. The Hopis have never developed a war dance. Their rituals are prayers to the gods, usually for rain. In the village plazas, the public part of the dances are held. Nearby are the kivas, the underground meeting places or clubhouses of the tribe. Crude ladders lead down into the depths. There below are held important meetings and the secret religious rituals witnessed only by the initiated. The climax to all the rituals is the snake dance, one of the most famous Indian ceremonials. Real, live snakes are used, many of them deadly rattlesnakes. The snake ceremony lasts 9 days, and on the last day emerges from the kiva to the plaza. There, an intricate ceremony is presented by priests of the secret snake and antelope clans. The original ritual is never photographed on the mesas. Only reenactments, especially presented elsewhere, are ever filmed. After the ritual, the snakes are carried by runners from the mesa to the valleys below, where they are released to the 4 directions. They become messengers to the gods of the underworld, taking to them the Hopi's prayer for rain. And so ends the most fervent and sacred ceremony of these deeply religious people. A gentle people that blows in the sky. And today, they find in their heavens the same serenity that through the ages has made them the peaceful ones, the Hopis.
Oh, wow. I mean, so when I was doing the show yesterday, I was scanning the film and I looked up and I saw the guy with the rattlesnake in his mouth, and I was like, holy cow, that's crazy. An amazing film, except incredibly patronizing. Wow. That's kind of how a lot of these films played out in the mid-20th century, actually earlier than that too. The way that they describe Native American customs, really. So I was at the EMEA conference last week, and I was hoping to kind of steal some time to like interview some people, and it just was so much. There were so many things going on and so many people tugging at me, because I do a lot of things related to movie and image archiving and mentoring, etc., that I just couldn't interview people. But there is this one thing that happens. It's archival screening night, where we all pile into a theater, which it turns out was a COVID spreading event, because there's people popping up now on social media with COVID. I don't have COVID so far. But anyways, so they show different archives show different films or discoveries or things that they had preserved, and it's wonderful. It's a really amazing night. Sometimes it goes a little long, but in general, you guys would dig it. You would love it. And one of the films that was shown was a snippet from this next film, which I've been working with some National Archives footage. And this one I saw, and I was like, wow, I got to show this on the show, but it's like 39 minutes long. So it just happened at archival screening night. They showed like a snippet of this film. And I was like, oh my gosh, I totally have to show this in its entirety. So this is, the subtitle of it is Freaks versus the Straights. And it's by the National Park Service. And it's basically how park rangers should deal with hippies hanging out in their parks, and then how the straight people are trying to also deal with hippies in the park. So it's fascinating. Anyways, here it is. Enjoy.
You've got college students that have started to rebel, and it's become a very serious problem, in my estimation, that for law enforcement officers and for the public in general.
The seasonal who is in charge or second command or whatever, say, go over to that campground and see what the hell those hippies are doing. Well, you know, geez, you go over there and there's 5 or 6 bands, you know, which hippies they talking about, or what the hell's a hippie? And there's a bunch of long hairs in C3. Go over there and check them out. Why? Make sure the camp's clean, you know. If the camp's dirty, kick them out, you know. And I feel, you know, it gives me a kind of a weird feeling to have somebody say, well, if they're not doing everything perfect, throw them out. But I've never yet been sent over to the campground for what we call the straight society and to say, throw them out. Not once.
Personally, I don't quite know what a hippie is unless he says I'm a hippie. He has a different form of dress from the other people. I think the average American citizen rather expects him to tend toward violence because they have seen him on the TV acting violently.
I remember the preacher was telling me that he ran across a young lady down there that was just bare-ass naked, and she didn't think anything about it. She's just talking to him just like you and I are standing here talking now. He says, I don't know what you can do about that. She wasn't disturbing anybody but me.
I'd say no doubt that the majority of the problems in this park are with the youth. We describe them as hippie types, the long-haired, the under the 21 age group. I definitely think they're wrong. I think they're causing the problem. I think they're doing things that are illegal. You can talk generation gap, or you can talk sociology. You can say he didn't have the same chance that you had. But I think they're causing the problem. I think since the majority of the trouble is with long hairs, that actually probably subconsciously or consciously, most rangers now have a prejudice against long hairs.
Law enforcement's getting so out of hand, it's unreal.
Like, you know...
Like, they just, you know, they see the way that you carry yourself. You know, majority of people are clean, I sure hope so, for their own benefit. But your hair's a little long or something, and like, yeah, like, I need a haircut. Yeah, right, that's what I hear.
That's it.
And like, you look a little different, and they think that you're an entirely different person. You think that you're not from this earth or something.
One cop, I know he was from South, you know, and he'd sit there and talk to me, keep on talking about my dog and my ID, and he'd get me in a corner where I couldn't answer, and then he'd nudge his buddy and go, haha, dig it, I got him this time, you know. And they did this for about 2 hours.
I've tried to be nice to, you know, hundreds and hundreds of them, and they have no respect for you.
It's really nice. They're a lot nicer here than in a lot of other places. You know, more willing to. Of course, it depends on if you have long hair.
I think with the long hair, I harass him a lot more than I do with the other type of individual. It's because he's that way. He's long-haired, cruddy. I think he's born and raised and brought up a lot better than that, and it's one of those things you just change to.
It's just a hassle, man. The only time I'd come back here is if, you know, I was riding with about 200 bikes, man.
Sometimes I'm harassing the people, yeah. Some of the young kids and the narcotics and all these problems we have out here, we roust them, we keep them moving because we have an idea what they're up to.
That's all we have been getting is hassle. Since we got in this park.
We do get a lot of feedback from the young people because they do not like to see police forces in here. They do not like to feel that they would be arrested for underage possession or possession of narcotics or the disorder they cause. They resent it more than the visitor who comes here to enjoy the park as we think it should be enjoyed.
The older generation comes up here and they get very turned off as to what they see and being kept awake at night in the campgrounds and all the noise and the drunkenness and disorderly conduct, et cetera, and they stay away. Well, the space they leave behind means one more campground which is open for the individuals who like the drugs and the parties and you know what goes with it. So consequently, we have the one segment of the population is avoiding Yosemite like the plague, and at the same time, another segment is flocking in for all the lawlessness.
We encounter quite a few visitor who would be described as a straight, who comes to us and wants us to take action against the long hair just because he's a long hair. And we try to find out, well, what is being done wrong, and quite often nothing is being done wrong. He just objects to the scene, so to speak, of this person or this group being next to him, and he feels that they must be wrong because they look so totally disreputable by his standards.
When we have, well, like our motorcycle gangs will eventually come in occasionally, the good people or the quiet people just pick up and move out. And unless these gangs, they in most instances will conform to the regulations, because my general spiel to them is your places are running out. If you should screw up here, that's one more place you can't go. And eventually there's going to be no places you can go.
The people who have come here in the past, never saw a park ranger, and so this area got a reputation kind of like for freaks. It attracts freaks, and they come down here and they try and get away with just about everything they can. I've had communes set up down below the falls, and they never last very long because food's a problem down here, and they usually resort to stealing food from the campers. I've busted up one commune, and I've chased two guys out for stealing that I caught at 3:30 in the morning during Easter vacation.
Here, the local population, or the so-called straight population, they seem to have no tolerance for long hair. One occasion last year, we'd arrested two young men for indecent exposure, took them into the Shannon County jail, where we booked them and then arranged a court hearing. A very short while later, the magistrate judge, who was 84 years old, issued a court order directing myself and two other officers, who were deputy sheriffs in that county, to take the two young men to the local barber shop for a shave and a haircut. We advised the judge that this was contrary to Supreme Court rules and was held to be cruel and unusual punishment. He promptly informed us that we would not have to compel them to get a haircut, but we would take them to the barber shop under penalty of contempt ourselves. If they elected to refuse to get the haircut, we were directed to bring them back into his court once daily, and each time he planned to assess the maximum fine for contempt of court. Well, with this sort of pressure, the boys elected to get their haircuts.
We have a lot of hippies. I'll have to speak very frankly and honestly and say that in 8 years' experience of working both day and night, that 80, 90, even as high as 95% of them have not given us any trouble. And when asked to leave an area or asked to put out a fire, they have done so.
Most of the people here in the valley that we do get all of our problems from, as far as law enforcement, are the long-haired individuals.
we shouldn't just assume that all kids are thieves and that all adults are good, and that, for example, that all long-haired kids are problems, and that if they cut their hair, why, they're complying with adults and are automatically good.
It's kind of hard for rangers to keep abreast of things like that, to deal fairly with both sides and in a changing social world.
We hitchhiked up from San Diego here, and it's, you know, everybody's been great to us, turning us on to a lot of food, free food, and it's really been great.
And these beautiful people would like to live down here forever because it's such a beautiful area, and they go around to the campers and beg food and that kind of thing, and I eventually have to step in and put my foot down and be kind of nasty to them. The young people say this is Eden, and I represent the snake in the Garden of Eden.
In the campgrounds, we have some people who like to partake of narcotics, alcohol. They want to sing along, look for the girls, and to have a party while they're here in Yosemite.
Now you said we come up here and do what we want to do. Well, a lot of things we want to do, we can't do because, let's face it, it's human nature. You got to keep your thing together, you know, we're not animals.
It wasn't so bad last year. The rangers just said keep away from the campers. But now that they're wandering out in the woods, you know, picking out towards me. Seen quite a few guys get arrested, handcuffs now.
Yeah, they even have people in plain clothes, you know, just regular people with Levi's on, arresting you, searching you down.
I think that probably we have some people who are uptight about this class of person. Now, whether they're doing anything wrong or not, they want to really keep an eye out, which maybe they know more than I do about this. But with the job I have all winter long, I just can't see it, you know, because I sit and talk to kids of this nature. We talk about different things, and I can't see where they're, you know, a person's got to prove to me that they're an ass before they are an ass, in other words. And just because they have long hair, they're wearing the beads, and the girl's got no bra, which that's up to them too, that doesn't mean that, you know, that they're on pot and they're acid heads and all they're going to do is run around and sell it and give it to other kids. I mean, I don't go along with that theory. In fact, it bugs me a little bit.
We just don't have time to sit down and rap with those kids to find out what they want from a national park, and at the same time to tell them what we consider to be minimal, acceptable standards in the park. In other words, the problem of disorderly conduct in the campgrounds. I mean, gee, that's a growing phenomenon. We can hardly pass a week without having some kind of type of confrontation in a campground. Well, gee, I think we could solve our problem, or a part of it at least, if we could sit down and say, look, man, like, we don't think this is acceptable behavior in a national park. You come to a national park not for a 3-month rolling party, but there are other values, you know. But, geez, we don't have time. There's an accident down the road here, 5 miles an hour. There's a guy drowning in the lake. There's a car prowl. You know, we just don't have time to do that.
Quite often, a lot of these young people tend to be some of the deeper appreciators of the park and are more aware of it. Kind of interesting, you know, you always think of long hairs as being a problem and a change, but some of the most intensely interested and interesting people are some of the long-haired people who are really interested in the park. Some of my best contacts and most pleasant and enjoyable contacts in any given day are hippie types, freaks, or whatever you want to call them. By the same token, some of the most unpleasant and toughest contacts are with the same type of people in a slightly different situation. But primarily, if we can talk about Yellowstone and we have something in common, why, we do all right.
My finding has been that they're not a bunch of grammar school dropouts. They're, for the most part, are probably all college graduates. I'm trying to say all, but a great part of them are college graduates or college students at least. And they're very intelligent. And For the most part, also, I found that they're really the ones that are concerned about what's happening in the country, concerned about the environment, the destruction of the environment. We have very little problem with them.
The younger kids come and take over, and they don't seem to have too much regard for what other people feel are their rights, you know, for decent language, etc. And we get a lot of complaints about kids raising Cain, and they swore in front of my wife and this kind of stuff. I don't know if that's anything abnormal or if they're kids, I guess. They do that.
Young people have come up here to get away from the city, to have a nice vacation, to gather and more or less to party, if you want to call it partying, just a matter of getting together and talking and rapping and having a nice time. And they can't do that anymore because the enforcements come in and they make them clear out, or they may be interrupting some person's lunch hour and they're asked to leave.
They have a great need to get together in large groups to really enjoy themselves, and we feel that it's terribly wrong if a number of them get together in one area. We're sure they're doing something wrong. It's an illegal assembly or something. So we break this up.
They run off all the toilet tissue, and you go in there and there's none, no mirrors. They try to break the commodes right off the wall or off the floor, break the lids off. Oh, I mean, that costs taxpayers money. These restrooms in Camp 12 cost the government $2,400 apiece. A couple over there doesn't have a mirror left in it.
You think we're too soft on that?
Sure, we're too soft. They wait too long before they try to do anything.
New breed, the hippies, whatever name to be used for them. I think the only point that we have trouble are the radicals. I'm not a long hair myself, but I don't have anything against them.
What really got me mad with the chicks is when they're searching them, you know? They're putting their hands underneath their clothes and everything, and they're just putting their hands anywhere they want to, and that don't get it at all. They're going to search a chick. They're going to pat them for a weapon, not stick their hands underneath their blouses and down their pants and everything, and I saw a lot of that yesterday.
Well, I think it's disgraceful. We came here to have a very nice weekend with 5 children, and we put up our tent, and we were quite happy, and there were a lot of hippie kids over there creating a lot of noise, but they were having fun in their own way. And the way this whole thing started, it was just like a Gestapo movement, the way they just came in and threw them all on the ground. The kids started crying. It was just awful. It should not happen in the parks. Parks are where you come to have a recreation and fun with the children, not to have someone coming along hassling you and arresting you. And I don't really care much whether they caught them with dope or whether they didn't. All I know is it wrecked our whole weekend. It got everybody uptight, and it was just miserable. If they want to arrest these kids for dope smuggling, there's a highway in and a highway out. Can't they do it on that? Why must they do it here? I think that they should take these policemen and the whole thing that they're starting here and stop it right away. And if they have to arrest somebody, do so on the highways. Because they must reinforce the law. We all realize that. We need the law more than anybody does with the children. But we don't want displays of it like that exhibition the other night. It was disgraceful. It's disgusting to see one set of human beings treat another in that fashion. Disgusting.
You can't just curtail the enforcement of the law because it's a park, so if these things are brought into the park and the park people are made aware of it, why then it's their duty bound to make an arrest. In this case, they felt that the people were peddling dope at the park. This caused trouble, and I felt that their coming in was right. The manner in which they did it was a little bit abusive. I felt it was a little bit strong, the way that they attracted the kids, the way they pushed them around, and in some cases, 1 or 2 cases where they were aggravated, the police reacted to actions by the fellows themselves, the kids themselves.
When they tried to scratch the backs of their necks, they'd kick them and so on, and this made her awfully upset. This whole inhumanity to man, you know, got her completely freaked out. And it's too bad. It's really too bad.
The long hairs that we're coming in contact with, 95% of them are polite and seem to be interested in in the National Park Service and their first national river and that sort of thing. They do bug seem to bug the straight people just by being here. The straight people don't like to be around them. But as far as the long hairs going out of their way to create problems for the rangers or the straight people, I have never observed that. There's just a friction between the two groups, an animosity, and I think it's mainly on the part of the straight people.
They have more patience. You know, I think it's a total trend now that younger people are getting to have more patience with other people than some of the older rangers or even older people in general.
The younger people are harder to control, mainly because they have in their mind every time they see a policeman that he's going to do something to them. A lot of policemen are stereotype, long-haired type people. And you can't really blame a lot of policemen that are continuously on demonstrations for doing this, except it just takes experience with the policeman and a lot of demonstrations to realize that just because someone has long hair, he's not really basically a troublemaker. There's a potential he is, but you got to wait till he does something wrong before you can actually say he's a troublemaker. The older people that come here to demonstrate are extremely peaceful. We've had all kinds of demonstrations, young and old, but the older people that come here, you ask them to do something, they do it because they have respect over the years for the police department.
There are older people above my age, above 30, above 40, that just make me sick to my stomach to deal with. And there's just as many below that age group that give me the same feeling. And there are people above and below that line, and it's an individual thing. You can't group it.
When adults see that kids don't take their advice, they become terribly indignant about it and feel that their role in society is threatened, I guess. And so they say, why don't you do like we tell you to do? And so I suspect that's a good part of it. We don't really try to accommodate them and try to understand their point of view as much as we should.
I would say that there really is no problem at all getting along with the long-haired person as long as you treat them with respect and don't try to order them anywhere, out or otherwise.
I don't make an effort to, or should I say, I don't go out of the way to establish a rap or a rapport or what have you with the long hairs, but if they approach me, neither do I completely ignore them.
There are rangers in our service who view the young visitor who wears his hair long, with or without a beard, with or without granny glasses and beads, who is going barefoot, without a shirt, perhaps, as simply instinctively an undesirable, in quotes, an undesirable visitor. And this is something that in our service I would suggest to our rangers that we can't countenance. This is getting us into an area of rendering personal judgments about who is a good park user and who is a bad park user. And this is not a function of either management or of law enforcement. Until anyone, whether he's driven in a Cadillac or whether he's come in on his bare feet with a pack on his shoulder and with long hair, until they violate clearly a park rule or regulation or some other law which is applicable, the judgment is not called for, and we cannot be guilty of selectively enforcing law on the basis of appearance.
Among the rangers, there are good and bad rangers. There are the kinds that take a harder line, and there are those who don't. Unfortunately, most of the kids see the bad ones, and they think that everyone in the ranger staff is that way. There's a labeling process. The whole group gets identified with the bad ones, and that's exactly the case among the thinking of the rangers. They see a number of kids who are doing some things that are really bad, say really freaking out on reds and wine and Yosemite, or stealing. And they see the way these kids are dressed, which is not very appropriate by conventional standards, and they see the length of the hair and everything. And they say, oh yeah, I know that type. And then every other person who looks that way is labeled in the same way. And so this tends to polarize the groups a great deal, because the whole group is identified with a relatively small proportion of bad people. And I'm convinced that in both groups, that proportion is small.
I've forgotten the figures, but as we look like at the next national elections, some 25 million people over the age of 18 and below the age of 25, is it, will be eligible to vote, and likely will vote in large numbers. And I think it's with this group of people that we see the greatest change in attitude and view about what parks are all about.
In a national political sense, we've legitimized young people, not specifically the freak youth culture, but freaks are part of the general 25 million people. Economically, for a long time, business has recognized that there's a different group of people, young people, who have different needs, and they've responded to those needs very greatly. The various marketing techniques have encouraged young people to buy certain products that are oriented greatly towards them. So why shouldn't the Park Service respond and legitimize this group of people too?
Park programs, I think, traditionally have been built upon the American family and that unit as the basic user of national park facilities and programs. Consequently, we have geared our programs, our operating programs, our public use programs, and we have geared our facilities to the family unit. The young people today don't use the parks as a family unit. They're apt to use them singly and in twos, but very often and most often in relatively large groups, 15, 25, 30, and even larger. And yet our facilities, our campgrounds, are not designed for this kind of group use. They're designed with individual sites based upon, a maximum perhaps of 6 people per site. Again, the family unit concept. Our picnic grounds are established and designed in much the same way, so that we really don't have programs that are youth-oriented.
If the objective was to knock the young person with long hair out, whether we call him a hippie or whatever we call him, I think that's true. We'll probably stop having him come in the large numbers. We are out from the time they enter the park through the entrance station to the time they depart. We're keeping a sharp check on them with the idea of getting rid of them, actually.
And I think once they really do crack down, I think the word will gradually get out that Yosemite isn't such a great place for parties after all, that people who work in Yosemite and who enforce the rules and regulations, and they will be enforced, and that possibly we may get a change in the clientele up here. This is what we're hoping for.
No, I think this is a natural park, and I think that everybody should be welcome up here. I don't think it should be limited to the people that have campers and that have money that can afford to come into the park and sit down and play cards. I think it should be open to everybody.
I think we would have gone nuts if we had been over on this other side, or the people around us would have, because we're constantly singing and we constantly have very noisy campfires at night, and we stay up to all hours at night, and it's really great.
We're not very apt to make judgments about a Boy Scout group or a conservation organization group as they're making use of the park, because I think we have accepted that they have their credentials and that therefore they're good park users. Yet I know from having talked with many rangers that they have observed the behavior of conservation groups, Boy Scout groups, and other similar kinds of groups in the park that has simply not been acceptable. They have abused park resources to a similar degree as any of the young groups in society who were using the park in their way.
You're mixing two groups, and of course one group don't see eye to eye to the other group, and it causes a lot of hard feelings because one group doesn't come here for the same thing the other group does.
They should make a campsite for the young people, you know, the ones that like to make a lot of noise, and some for the older folks like us.
I think there's a lot of validation, you know, in, say, a special area. If they want to stay up and sing all night, well, fine.
You can't have any music on after about 9 o'clock or something, 10 or something like that. And if you do, they don't just tell you to turn it down. They come and tear your van apart and look through all this.
Setting up special camp areas where, whatever you want to call them, freaks, long hairs, or whatever, can have their way is one way of dealing with the problem, yet I don't think it particularly fits in the overall Park Service idea. I think that once we start setting up special areas for one group, then we have to set up special areas for another group, and pretty soon you have quite a problem without really vastly expanding your facilities.
If they'd make one camp like Camp 11 a party camp, you know, like Camp 11, just put everybody who wants to gig and hoot and holler over there, that'd solve half the problem, because that's most of the problem is these old people complaining to them about the noise.
A moderate type of segregation like that, I think, would be great.
Like they come in here, you pay, stay in the campground, you get a big group, think they can make noise all night long, and other people come in the camp too. They're not the only one. You know, they go in some desolated place out in the middle of the desert somewhere. They want to make noise all night, in my opinion.
Everybody's got to live together in some manner, and the only thing we would do by separation in this context would be to reinforce the problem that already exists.
I think people likes to be free to camp where they choose in a park, really.
If those in the majority, in this case is the establishment straits, don't see a kind of action which they say is a crime, maybe it isn't a crime then. I mean, it's the old question of whether a tree falling out in the park woods makes a sound when it crashes. The relativity of what is deviant has much to do with the perception of those people who define it as deviant.
I think that the management concept of having special campgrounds with special regulations for the various types of groups that come to the park is really the only way to go. The incompatibility of the two groups in the same campground is just going to lead to a continual confrontations between the two groups, and consequently it's going to require a law enforcement response, and this is what we want to get away from. Anything that we can handle through a management process to eliminate a problem, instead of having to engage into a law enforcement response to it, is what we've got to do. We've got to go to a management concept of it.
We don't need a sophisticated campsite costing $2,500 to $3,500 a site to accommodate these youngsters. What we do need are group camps and hostels. We likewise need to recognize that the age span that we have in coming to our parks has increased. Normally, in times past, we had a rather affluent group of fairly above middle-aged people coming to the parks. They came there, they hiked, they got tired, they wanted to go to bed. Many of our visitors coming there today don't get tired and want to go to bed at 10 o'clock. And I think we have to recognize this in the kind of programs that we offer and the kind of facilities that we offer. I don't believe that we ought to provide youth campgrounds, but I do think that in our campgrounds we should make some change in program times and in curfews and these kind of things.
There isn't a hassle between our young long hairs and the older people that come down. They each go their separate ways and do their own thing, really, and they pretty much accept the attitude and the way of life of the other individuals.
In relation to my position as a school teacher, I attribute all of it, as far as I'm concerned, my personal opinion, that it's parental control. The kids are running more, they're more mobile, they have cars, they do what they want, the parents don't know where they're at, and quite often they don't care.
20, 30 years ago, they ate
goldfish. Today they wear long hair. This one hollers this way, and the fathers and mothers are still complaining about the children.
We seem to get along all right, and have very few instances that I can recall when there was any agitation either way from the rangers towards them or them towards us.
It's a different, Cape Cod has a different policy than the other parks I've been to, especially the western ones. I think it has worked, and certainly by measure of crime, Cape Cod has last year had 32 reported acts of major crime, which accounted for less than 1% of the total amount of crime reported in the national park system, not considering the D.C. area. Yosemite had 14%, and Lake Mead had about 8%. So as measured in terms of major crimes, Cape Cod is working. Measured in terms of the way the deviant groups see the park administration, it's working too. I had nothing but praise on my interview pad when I was talking to the gays and the freaks. The gays thought the park police were not the park police, the rangers, who were doing a very good job, and that was true for all the other deviant groups in Cape Cod. It was exactly the opposite in the western parks. There were criticisms about hassling.
I think law enforcement is the only way to go about it with particularly the young kids. I think they want to get their wrists slapped, so to speak. They're out there seeing what they can do, how much they can get away with, so we try and give it back to them.
I think our image is not much different than the typical police officer in the typical urban area. And in some ways, you see, we're hassling him, or this young person, in the same way that the police are in his communities. We're asking him to keep quiet. We're asking him not to blow dope next to Mr. Joe Average American. We're asking him to camp in designated areas. We're asking him not to let his dogs run out without a leash. I mean, we're hassling him. And we have to, but he doesn't regard us as any savior of the wilderness, any Joe Ranger, just another federal pig.
But I still believe that it's very possible that we could get a dialogue going with the kids again and not add to the generation gap, but actually contribute finding some means of closing it a little in the park, because there's a tremendous background to talk that we can all dig, and that's the scenery. And we could stop being uptight. I think maybe we could strike up a pretty good dialogue with the kids.
Whether we recognize it or not, everybody yearns to belong. And what they yearn to belong to, most of all, is to the human race. And the human race is a great stream that has been flowing through history for thousands of years, and they want to be a part of it. And I don't really believe that it's necessarily a generation gap. I don't have any generation gap with our children. It's simply a question of do you appreciate them as individuals and respect them as individuals, or do you categorize them as young people who don't really understand what the problem is? And sometimes I feel that that's really the problem. Is that people at my age level don't recognize that these are very, very smart young people who are deeply interested and committed to the ideals of national parks, to the value systems in this society, even though sometimes they demean them or criticize them. The very fact they're criticizing them is an indication they appreciate them. Otherwise, why would they be criticizing them? So that it's a matter of self-respect, again. And your attitude about people. Do you like people? Do you love people? Do you believe that people are your brothers? And if you believe this, then you can communicate with them. Because trust engenders trust. And if you don't trust the visitor, if you don't trust the young person who may deviate in hair or dress, then there is no basis on him to trust you. So that somebody's got to trust somebody first before we're going to restore communications. And my attitude is, let's trust them and see what happens.
Wow, so great. I'm sorry about the, I just am seeing these error messages about the encoder acting out, and I'm not quite sure why that is. But, so I apologize for the stutter. Yeah, I liked all the lyrics from the song Signs showing up in the comments. And it's, one thing is clear, us older people don't like what those young people are doing. It drives us nuts. We don't like it and we don't understand it, and it is offensive to us. That is the rallying cry of the 20th century and 21st century, is we don't understand what those young people are doing and we don't like it. Anyways, yeah, that's such a great film. And so there's others in this series, but none of them are nearly as good as that. And I think some of you mentioned a PBS series about the Yosemite riots, and I feel like this footage was probably used in that documentary on PBS, given how I came across it. I work with a stock footage researcher who does a lot of work for PBS, so it's very likely that this film showed up there. Thank you, everybody, for contributing. It's pretty great to see people responding to the dialogue and appropriately. So anyways, yeah, join me tomorrow. Hopefully my sinuses will be better. Right now I just feel like there's this itchy mask that is just and it's just kind of bringing me down, but that's okay. So yeah, join us tomorrow. If you like what you saw, hit the thumbs up, hit the like button. Kevin and Jeremy both donated via the super thanks button, so thank you for that. You can also donate via ko-fi.com/avgeeks or patreon.com/avgeeks. Those are great ways to support us, and that, of course, that money goes to pay for 7 storage units. Another way you can support us is we are adding countless films from our collection and from the Prelinger collection and from other places on our YouTube channel, and that has ads on it, and sometimes you watch them and we get a nickel here or pennies there. It's like we're busking in a subway thing and everybody has change that they're throwing at me, and that adds up, and again that is also going towards storage rentals, because we have a hobby that makes us collect round things that are about this size on average and take up an insane amount of space. So thank you for supporting us with that weird hobby. Yeah, everybody have a great rest of your day. Hopefully it won't be so rainy tomorrow, but we will see you soon. Take care.